Hi everyone, Kevin Blades here. So it's been a while since the last vlog, and I thought it was about time for another. I'm also going to try and keep these a bit shorter because nobody listened to me babble for 10 minutes. So this time I thought I'd like to go into a little bit of the background of kind of some of the cultural influences and sort of the humor philosophy that underlies the show. So back in the late 70s, there was a show that was produced in Hamilton at CHCH, and a lot of you will know this already because it became quite popular in syndication later, called The Hilarious House of Frightenstein. As a kid who loved monsters and makeup and puppets, this was just the best. The show was amazing, and it kind of had a design philosophy that was we're going to do the best we can with what we have, and it turned out, I mean, they did amazing. The quality of the makeup on that show, when you consider what they had to work with, was just phenomenal. And of course, it was starring the amazing comedic actor Billy Van, who just did a fantastic job of creating these characters. I mean, the number of characters, he must have played like a dozen characters in that show, all of which were fantastic. And the show really made an impression on me as a kid. And Frightenstein was part of a kind of group of shows that came about all around the same time, of this sort of like late 70s kind of experimental, kind of low budget, just sort of weird and trippy and psychedelic, just trying to like play around with stuff. I think like Electric Company fits in there. There's some British shows, I think of Vision On, that fits in there. And even to some extent, a lot of the early Sesame Street fits into that kind of design philosophy. And in my head, the approach that those shows took to just sort of like making a thing with what we have, and we're not going to worry about the technicalities of it, we're just going to try and like be creative and be funny and be broad. That is a lot of what the sort of basic underlying philosophy of the Oracle is. You know, there's a lot of times in the Oracle where it's like, oh, I'll do an effect or something, and it doesn't look that great, and I know if I spent time on it that, you know, oh, I could make this look better. But then I think back to something like Frightenstein and you know, the terrible chroma keying that they were doing, and we didn't care about that stuff. That was part of the show. The kind of the silly effects and the crudeness of it was part of the kind of overall design philosophy of the show, and I just loved it. It was great. So there was one segment in Frightenstein that featured Billy Van, of course, playing a character who was a fortune teller wearing a wildly culturally inappropriate costume, I must point out. Thankfully, he did the character voice as a kind of Peter Lorre, so it wasn't quite all the way culturally stereotyped, but it was pretty bad, particularly for, like, you know, our sensibilities now. It was the 70s, we were dumb. However, the premise of this segment was that this fortune teller character would answer questions that were sent in by the audience. And the name of this character was, of course, that's right, the very name of the Oracle himself is a direct homage to Hilarious House of Frightenstein. And one of the things that Frightenstein sort of made me appreciate was that, I mean, there was very broad humor, and it was a kid's show, so it was very simple humor, but so much of the humor came out of the interaction of the characters and Billy Van's performance as that character. And it fit in with a kind of philosophy that I then later learned from studying Jim Henson's work, and it is that the character comes first. And if that character is strong enough and has enough of a clear personality and has their motivations, everything else comes out of that. And so the plot kind of doesn't matter as much as having a strong character, and the plot can weave itself around that. And that's kind of what I do with the Oracle. I don't necessarily have a big grand plan, but the characters will inform where we go. And that is very much the kind of philosophy of something like Frightenstein, where it's like you don't have anything else, so you have to rely on the performances of your talent. And in terms of the style of humor that is in the Oracle, I talked about this a little bit on my Facebook with James Marshall from Puppets. Shout out, James. That I just write what I think is funny. And since I'm trying to keep the Oracle as a kid-friendly channel, there's some stuff that I just don't do. I don't swear, I don't do off-color humor. And some people think that that's a restriction, but what I've come to appreciate is if you have to rely on swearing or off-color humor, that ends up being a crutch, and that ends up being something that you actually limit your ability as a humorist to be funny if you just have to end your joke with a swear word or something in order to get a laugh. Funny is funny, and it doesn't matter if you swear during it or not. And if you can get to that funny, then that's what's going to carry you through. And so keeping the humor level at an age-appropriate point is not a problem. If anything, it makes it funnier because you have to figure out what is the point of funniness, and that isn't relying on these kind of external props to sort of give it a framework. You just have to figure out what is funny. So there's a little glimpse into some of the design philosophy of the humor behind the Oracle. It is so much fun to do. It is a challenge to do. As a writer, being able to figure out what is funny is one of the hardest things that there is to do, but it is also one of the most rewarding things there is to do. And you know, when people enjoy the show, it fuels that entire thing. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.